They came to conquer. What they found was hell wrapped in skin. The Threx dominion had spread across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Dozens of civilizations had bent the knee, either through fear or fire. Earth was supposed to be easy. One blue dot full of primitives. Unarmed. Unready. Unsuspecting. They dropped over New Delhi first. Then Berlin. Then Johannesburg. Cities fell like dominoes. Or so they thought. But Earth wasn't like the others. We weren't peaceful philosophers or passive creatures worshipping the stars. We were violent. We were unpredictable. And more than anything, we were cornered. The first mistake the Threx made was thinking the nuclear arsenal wouldn't be used. It was. Not against them. Against ourselves. Entire regions detonated their own facilities to stop Threx footholds. Millions died. Not for patriotism. Not for glory. Just to make the aliens bleed. The second mistake? Underestimating Earth's chaos. Within the first week, insurgent cells formed from shattered militaries, armed civilians, and ex-convicts. No flags. No borders. Just rage. They didn't understand what it meant to fight humans. Not truly. They didn't know about trench warfare. About suicide bombers. About chemical fire, pressure mines, or bleeding out in a jungle with a bayonet in your gut. They would. And they did. In the burned shell of Sao Paulo, a gang of teenagers hijacked a Threx supply walker using only homemade explosives and a laptop with cracked alien code. They didn't take it to safety. They ran it into a Threx landing zone and overloaded the power core. 47 alien soldiers died. The kids were never found. Only their message was broadcast. We are Earth's immune system. You're the virus. That clip spread through the HoloNet, an underground global web pieced together from scavenged satellites and alien data nodes. It became a rally cry. The Threx had firepower, yes. But humans? Humans had spite. And spite doesn't run out of ammunition. They landed in Chicago thinking it was a supply hub. Instead, it was a trap. A man named Reyes, a former firefighter, had rigged an entire skyscraper with fuel tanks. The moment the Threx entered the structure, he detonated it from a nearby rooftop. The shockwave leveled 5 blocks. Reyes didn't survive, but neither did the Threx battalion. That became a pattern. No front lines. No rules. No surrender. The Threx command logs later called it death by madness. Their soldiers weren't trained to fight enemies who didn't fear dying. Who laughed through pain. Who booby-trapped their own children's toys with explosives. It shattered their morale. The humans began to call it the flip. The moment when an alien squad realized they were being hunted, not the other way around. Threx patrols started avoiding cities. Then towns. Then even forests. But humans were already in the mountains. Underground. Inside their own dead. They buried soldiers with live grenades wired to motion triggers. They hid neural scramblers in playgrounds. They stitched mines into corpses. And the worst part? They filmed it. And they sent it back. You wanted Earth? You got it. Welcome to your extinction. But this wasn't just Earth anymore. The HoloNet expanded. Pirated alien tech boosted signal reach into orbit. Exiled hackers on an abandoned ISS module managed to hijack a Threx scout ship's navigation system. They crashed it into its own mothership. This was the beginning of Phase 2. In Indonesia, rogue submariners launched tungsten rods into the upper atmosphere, orbital strikes from underwater. In Kenya, a rogue AI built from scrap medical implants coordinated 300 drone attacks simultaneously across 3 continents, and in Mexico? A 9-year-old girl named Eva Serrano killed a Threx warden with a slingshot and a broken ceramic shard, then broadcast her location to L. Lure in more of them. She died an hour later. But so did the entire landing squad that came for her. Her last words were streamed to every remaining HoloNet node. "I'm not brave. I'm just angry." That single message lit the sky with resistance fire from Manila to Moscow. The Threx had shields. Humans had grudges. And grudges are heavier than gravity. The Threx High Command was no longer silent. They issued their first official transmission since the invasion began, sent in over 300 languages simultaneously. Submission guarantees survival. Resistance ensures extinction. The message echoed through every hijacked frequency, across shattered cities and smoldering hills. But humanity had its own response, shorter, simpler, and broadcast right back on the same channels. "We're already extinct. You're just catching up." The war entered its ugliest phase. Not just urban combat or guerrilla tactics, psychological warfare. The HoloNet began seeding fake surrender sites. Entire zones that looked compliant, silent, untouched. When Threx squads entered, they'd be overwhelmed by ambushes from walls, sewers, corpses rigged with smart mines. In Rio de Janeiro, a team called the Shedmen turned the underground metro into a meat grinder. They moved silently, wore bone-white paint, and used no electronics. Just steel and instinct. When the Threx finally sealed the tunnels with gas, they thought the Shedmen were dead. But 2 weeks later, the corpses of an entire alien command squad were found displayed outside Threx headquarters, with subway tokens in their mouths. Meanwhile, the resistance evolved. What started as chaos was becoming something organized. A unified strike council was formed, not by nations, but by fighters. War-scarred survivors, rogue AIs, underground scientists, and exiled military leaders who had nothing left to lose. They called it the Ember Pact. Their motto? No planet left behind. They didn't just want Earth back. They wanted the Threx to pay. The Ember Pact launched its first coordinated counteroffensive using scavenged alien tech and old Cold War relics. Missile silos once rusted shut fired again. Orbit-to-surface nukes launched from submarines long thought scuttled. They struck Threx footholds in Antarctica, Central Asia, and the African Horn. And then came the biggest blow. A secret launch from an abandoned Chinese spaceport, once buried under debris, sent a payload into Threx orbit. Inside, a virus made from Earth's most terrifying weapon. Not biological. Not digital. Human memory. Millions of war images. Screams. Executions. Burned cities. Dying children. All compressed into a hyperstimulation feed that hijacked the Threx neural grid. Ships crashed into each other. Troops went catatonic. Some began self-terminating. It became known as the Scream Loop. For the first time in the war, Threx warships retreated from Earth's orbit. Not for strategy. For survival. The sky above Earth was no longer quiet. Threx ships still hovered, cloaked in atmosphere, watching. But the fear had shifted. You could feel it in the way they scanned from orbit, slower, hesitant. You could see it in how their patrols shortened, how their landing parties doubled in armor. They had learned one thing. Humanity wasn't defending its home anymore. It was hunting. From the ruins of Sydney, Ember Pact engineers used melted alien hulls to build the first human-made star cannon. It wasn't sleek. It wasn't pretty. But when it fired, it punched a hole through a Threx frigate, and people in Chile saw the flash before they heard the boom. Civilians cheered like it was a World Cup final. Children carved fighter jets into the dirt. Teenagers painted kill counts onto the remains of tanks. The war wasn't just survival anymore. It was personal. In Istanbul, a one-legged ex-surgeon turned his clinic into a nerve center, running Black Ops raids through back-channel med evac drones. He was called the Scalpel. His crew? All volunteers. Most of them terminally ill. Every mission was a one-way trip. They never failed. The Scalpel's final broadcast before detonating his own mobile HQ under a Threx mothership became an anthem. "I gave up saving lives. Now I make every death count." But for every act of defiance, there was a cost. Entire coastlines were glassed by orbital beams. The Threx unleashed atmosphere disruptors, devices that made the very air burn. One EMP pulse wiped out half of South America's power for days. And still, humans kept fighting. Kept adapting. The Ember Pact initiated Project Hollow Sun, the first human starship prototype powered by repurposed alien drives. Not meant to escape. Not meant to flee. Meant to invade. The ship launched with only 8 crew members, all former resistance fighters. None were pilots. None had ever left Earth. The transmission they sent before disconnecting their comms is still whispered in survivor shelters. "You took our skies. We're taking your stars." And as their ship vanished into blackness, tearing a hole through space using tech it barely understood, humanity made one final promise. "We don't want peace. We want revenge." The Threx homeworld had not seen war in over 12 millennia. Its cities were crystalline towers floating on magnetic fields, skies patrolled only by ceremonial guards. It was paradise, calculated, polished, untouchable. Until Earth found it. Or more accurately, until Project Hollow Sun reached it. The Ember Pact ship didn't arrive quietly. It crashed into Threx orbit at terminal speed, broadcasting a distorted loop of Eva Serrano's last words. "I'm not brave. I'm just angry." It echoed across every planetary relay on the Threx network. Within minutes, Threx leadership went silent. Within hours, human signals followed them through the hole. The crew of the Hollow Sun, only 6 survivors now, didn't come with a fleet. They came with something worse. A payload. Inside the cargo hold. A hybrid virus built from human rage and Threx arrogance. It wasn't meant to kill. It was meant to remind. It hijacked Threx minds and injected visions, memories of Earth's fall. Every soldier they burned, every child they shot, every scream they'd caused. For the first time in their history, the Threx began to dream of guilt. It tore them apart from the inside. Meanwhile on Earth, Ember Pact forces launched coordinated ground assaults on every remaining Threx stronghold. No speeches. No banners. Just vengeance. A single signal was broadcast to all humans still alive. No prisoners. No mercy. No retreat. In Tokyo, a blind girl used sonar to guide a squad of veterans through collapsed tunnels. In Detroit, bikers rigged themselves with shrapnel armor and rode straight through Threx barricades. In Alaska, an old Inuit hunter killed a Threx general with nothing but a carved bone spear and walked 40 kilometers to tell the story. The message was clear. You don't need a fleet to win a war. You just need enough people who've lost everything. Above, in orbit, the Hollow Sun was dying. Its engines sputtered. Its hull cracked. The crew initiated the final protocol. A self-detonation wrapped in a scream loop, a final mind bomb large enough to fracture the Threx neural net across the galaxy. They lit the fuse. Their last message wasn't loud. It was just one word. Burn. And then they were gone. The skies over the Threx homeworld turned black. And Earth was silent again. The war ended not with a treaty. Not with surrender. Not even with a word. It ended in silence. When the Hollow Sun detonated, the Threx neural net collapsed across entire sectors. Ships stopped responding. Infantry units froze mid-step. Entire outposts went dark. The Empire wasn't defeated in battle. It was unplugged from itself. Back on Earth, skies once filled with enemy warships now held only clouds and ash. The orbital debris burned in the atmosphere like falling stars, streaks of red and white in memory. For the first time in years, there was no sound of invasion. No orders. No screaming. Just wind. The Ember Pact disbanded itself 3 days after the last Threx signal ceased. Not because their job was done, but because vengeance had no place in peace. Cities began to rebuild, though most were just bones and blueprints. Families started to gather in the craters. Names were spoken again. Graves were marked. A boy in Madagascar planted a tree where a Threx drop pod had landed. He said he wanted to grow something the aliens didn't touch. The hollow net now runs silently. Not for war, but for memory. They keep a running loop of the first Threx invasion footage. Not to hate. Not to rile up anger. To remind us of what was lost. Of what was done. Of what humans are capable of when pushed too far and above the remnants of Earth's atmosphere. In the shell of a shattered Threx frigate, someone left a message scratched into scorched metal. Simple. Human. Crude. But true. Next time, send diplomats.